Have you ever been on the receiving end of a prank that went just a little too far? A moment that left you soaking wet, red faced, and completely humiliated while everyone else was dying of laughter? There's a story, a piece of schoolyard folklore that's been floating around for years, and it's so perfect you just know it has to be true. It is a tale from a simpler time before social media, before every prank was filmed for views. A time when revenge was a dish best served cold, or in this case, very, very wet. The story goes like this: a group of students ambushes their classmate with water guns, but they make one huge mistake. They underestimate their quiet, stone faced teacher. What happens next is a simple, beautiful trap that delivers a month of detention to the pranksters and achieves legendary status. Now, this specific story is probably an urban legend, a mashup of 1,000 different high school tales, but it represents the absolute peak of karmic payback. So stick around to find out how one silent teacher and a cleverly filled chair created a story people are still telling decades later. And before we get into it, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. We post stories like this all the time, and you want to miss what's coming up. Let's go back in time. Imagine a high school English class, sometime in the not so distant past. It's that part of the spring term when the air itself feels restless. The windows are open, letting in the smell of cut grass and the sounds of a world that is definitely not discussing sentence structure. For the students, graduation is a shimmering oasis on the horizon, and the clock on the wall is ticking backward. The whole room is just a pot of teenage boredom, simmering away and waiting to boil over. In this classroom, the social food chain is crystal clear. You've got your jocks, your brains, your artists, and then you've got the pranksters. Our group of pranksters consists of four guys who aren't really evil, just bored. They are running on an endless supply of cheap laughs and entitlement. Their weapon of choice this season? Water pistols, small, easy to hide, and perfect for maximum chaos with minimum effort. They've become a standard accessory, turning the school hallways into a designated splash zone between classes. The hero of our story isn't one of them. She is an observer, the kind of person who gets through high school by staying off the radar. She is quiet, studious, and just trying to survive until the final bell without any drama. And then there's the teacher. Let's call him Mr. Harrison. Every school has a Mr. Harrison. He is a man who has seen it all, and decades of teaching have weathered him into a state of permanent, unflappable calm. He isn't mean, but he isn't friendly either. He is simply there, a fixed point in a swirling galaxy of adolescent chaos. He stands at the front of the room like a statue carved from tweed and chalk dust, his face a completely neutral mask. He lectures in a steady monotone, his expression never changing, whether a student is delivering a brilliant analysis of Shakespeare or setting off a stink bomb in the back row. This man does not engage. He doesn't react. He simply teaches, a lighthouse in a storm of hormones and horseplay. Over the years, the students have come up with their own theories about his silence. Some, like our four pranksters, see it as weakness. They think he is just given up, worn down by generations of kids just like them. They see his silence as a green light. Others, like our hero, aren't so sure. They see a flicker of something else in his quiet gaze, maybe an endless well of patience. Or maybe just a professional choice to stay above the petty drama. They suspect he sees and hears everything, and that his silence is a decision. This English class is the last period before lunch, the final agonizing stretch. The four pranksters are getting antsy. They're trading looks, little smirks, the kind of subtle signals a practice squad uses. Our hero sees it all from her desk, and a knot of dread tightens in her stomach. She knows something is coming. The air is thick with it. The only person who seems clueless is Mr. Harrison, who drones on about grammar, his voice a steady hum against the rising tension. The final bell shrieked, signaling the mad dash for freedom and lunch. As the classroom erupted in the noise of shuffling bags and scraping chairs, our hero stayed at her desk for just a moment, finishing a sentence in her notes. It was a tiny delay, but it was all the time the pranksters needed. When she finally stood up and swung her backpack on, her path to the door was blocked. The four of them were there, standing in a loose semicircle, their earlier smirks now wide, predatory grins. Before she could even ask what was going on, they raised their hands, each holding a water pistol gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The first shot was a shock of cold water squarely to the chest, soaking her shirt in an instant. It was so cold it took her breath away. Then the others opened fire. This wasn't a playful squirt. It was a coordinated attack. Water hit her face, her hair, her books. She stumbled back, sputtering, trying to shield herself. But it was pointless. They were laughing hysterically, the sound echoing in the nearly empty room. It was over in 10 seconds, but the humiliation felt infinite. She just stood there, drenched and shivering, hair plastered to her face, clothes clinging to her skin. Her notebooks were warped and soggy, her careful notes bleeding into blurry blue puddles. The worst part was their laughter loud, unrestrained, and completely without empathy. And through it all, one person did absolutely nothing. Mr. Harrison was at his desk, not 10 feet away. He saw the whole thing. He had to. But his expression never changed. He didn't say a word. He didn't move. He just sat there, shuffling papers as if one of his students hadn't just been cornered and assaulted in his classroom. His silence was deafening. It was a stamp of approval, proof that the pranksters were right. He didn't care. For our hero, that was the real injury. The water would dry. The notes could be rewritten. But the feeling of being abandoned by the one adult in the room, the person whose job it was to keep order that cut deep, his inaction turned a mean-spirited prank into something more. It told the bullies they were right. It told her she didn't matter. As the four boys sauntered out, still laughing, one tossed a "have a nice lunch" over his shoulder. She stood there for a long moment, the cold seeping into her skin. She looked from her ruined books to the back of Mr. Harrison's head, and in that moment, a cold, clear thought formed. The four pranksters were just idiots. The real problem, the real enabler, the real target for a truly satisfying revenge was the man who sat at the front of the class, wrapped in his cocoon of indifference. Her anger shifted its focus. This wasn't about getting back at them anymore. This was about him. She was going to make Mr. Harrison react. She was going to shatter that calm just once. Lunch was miserable. She hid out in the library, trying to dry her clothes under the bathroom hand dryer, feeling the chill of the water and the hot sting of shame. But as she sat there, the anger and embarrassment started to harden into something else. A plan. A beautiful, simple, and exquisitely perfect plan. Her mind raced. What was the goal? Not to cause damage or get anyone hurt. It was about delivering a message. It was about poetic justice. They used water to humiliate her in front of a teacher who did nothing. So, the revenge had to involve water, and it had to use the teacher to punish the pranksters. She realized a direct attack on the boys was pointless and messy. They'd know it was her, and it would just escalate things. No, the answer was elegance. The answer was creating a situation where they would be their own undoing. And the key was Mr. Harrison. He thought he was just an observer? She was about to make him the main event. She pictured him in her mind, sitting at his desk. And then it hit her. The chair. Mr. Harrison's chair. It wasn't one of those standard-issue plastic school chairs. It was an old, heavy, dark wood captain's chair, probably as old as the school itself. She'd seen it 1,000 times, but now she saw it differently. The seat wasn't flat. It was carved a shallow concave bowl, a reservoir. The plan bloomed in her mind, fully formed. The bell-ending lunch was her cue. She knew she had a small window of time when teachers were still in the staff lounge and students were stampeding through the halls. No one would notice her slipping back into the empty English classroom. Her heart pounded with nervous excitement as she peeked inside. Empty. A single column of sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating dancing dust motes. It felt like a stage waiting for its final prop. She went to the janitor's closet down the hall, always unlocked, and found a small bucket. She filled it halfway from the water fountain, the sound of the gurgling water seeming impossibly loud. Carrying it carefully, she returned to the classroom, her eyes locked on her target. Up close, the chair was even more perfect than she'd imagined. The depression in the solid, polished wood was significant. And because the wood was so dark, it would camouflage clear water perfectly. Anyone giving it a quick glance would see nothing wrong. With the precision of a bomb disposal expert, she slowly poured the water into the seat, filling the carved bowl right to the brim. It was more than a puddle. It was a small, contained lake. She stood back to admire her work. It was invisible. It just looked like a polished wooden chair. She returned the empty bucket, washed her hands, took a deep breath, and walked calmly to her desk just as her classmates began to trickle in. She opened her damp textbook and pretended to read, her heart hammering against her ribs. The trap was set. Now, she just had to wait. The classroom filled up, buzzing with post-lunch chatter. The four pranksters swaggered in, laughing, and took their usual seats in the back. They didn't even look her way. To them, she was already ancient history. She kept her head down, eyes on her book, but she wasn't reading a single word. All of her focus was on the front of the room, on that chair, sitting there like an unexploded bomb. A moment later, Mr. Harrison walked in, holding his coffee mug. He moved at his usual, unhurried pace, his face set in that familiar neutral mask. He put his mug on the desk, adjusted his papers, and turned to the class. She held her breath. This was it, completely oblivious. Mr. Harrison did what he did every single day. He pulled his chair out, turned, and started to lower himself into the seat. The world slowed down. She saw the fabric of his tweed trousers touch the surface of the water. She saw the tiny initial displacement. And then she saw physics take over in the most glorious way possible. The instant his full weight hit the chair, the water erupted. It didn't just spill, it shot upwards in two massive plumes, exploding from the compression. It was a geyser, a fountain, a tidal wave of righteous vengeance that drenched his trousers, soaked the back of his shirt, and splashed all over his desk. For one beautiful, perfect second, there was absolute silence, broken only by the sound of water dripping onto the floor. And then, Mr. Harrison did something no one had ever seen. He reacted. His eyes went wide with pure, undiluted shock. He leaped up from the chair as if he'd been electrocuted, a strangled gasp escaping his lips. He just stood there, dripping, hands held out to his sides as he stared down at his soaked trousers and the now very obvious pool of water in his chair. The mask wasn't just cracked, it was shattered. The class was frozen in stunned disbelief. No one knew what to do. No one dared to laugh, except for four people. In the back of the room, the pranksters, seeing their eternally stoic teacher soaking wet and in a state of panic, lost it. Their instinct to laugh at misfortune kicked in before their brains could catch up. A snort escaped one of them, followed by a cascade of hysterical, incriminating laughter from all four. They were pointing, slapping their desks, tears of joy streaming down their faces. Their laughter was a spotlight, and it drew every eye in the room, including Mr. Harrison S. A slow, quiet smile played on our hero S' lips. It was more perfect than she could have ever dreamed. She hadn't touched them. She hadn't said a word. She had just set the stage for them to hang themselves, and they had walked right into the noose, laughing all the way. Mr. Harrison, as shock slowly morphed into a cold, hard anger nobody had ever seen. His eyes, usually so distant, were now like chips of ice. He slowly turned his head and locked his gaze on the four laughing boys. He didn't have to ask who did it. Their booming laughter was a signed confession. In his mind, the math was simple. He was wet, they were laughing, therefore, they were guilty. He pointed a single trembling wet finger toward the back of the room. His voice, when it came out, was low and dangerously quiet. "You four, principal's office, now!" The laughter died in their throats. "What, us? We didn't do anything," one of them stammered, his face suddenly pale. Mr. Harrison took a step forward, his wet shoes squeaking on the floor. "I will not say it again. Get out!" Scrambling over each other, the four of them fled the room. The door swung shut behind them, leaving a silence even more profound than before. Mr. Harrison stood there for a moment, dripping, his chest heaving. Then, without another word, he walked out, leaving the class alone with an empty teacher's chair, a puddle on the floor, and the ghost of a perfect crime. What happened next became the stuff of school legend. Mr. Harrison, a man who hadn't shown an ounce of emotion in living memory, had been pushed too far. The four pranksters, caught red-handed by their own laughter, had no defense. They had a history of water pranks, and in Mr. Harrison's mind, the case was closed. Their claims of innocence were useless. The sentence was severe, a full month of detention. Every single day after school for 4 weeks, they had to report to Mr. Harrison's classroom. And they didn't just sit there in silence. No, the punishment was far more poetic. Their job was to clean and maintain the classroom, wiping down desks, washing the chalkboards, and, in a beautiful stroke of irony, meticulously polishing every piece of wooden furniture, including the very Captain S chair that had sealed their fate. For the next month, our hero watched as the four boys were subjected to quiet, grinding justice. The swagger was gone. The laughing stopped. They sat sullenly under the watchful, icy glare of Mr. Harrison, who had returned to his stoic self, but with a new hard edge. His silence was no longer seen as weakness. It was now understood as the quiet calm of a dormant volcano. And the narrator? She was a ghost. No one ever suspected her. Why would they? She was just the quiet girl who kept to herself. She enjoyed a deep, satisfying sense of victory every time she saw the boys scrubbing desks after the final bell. Not only had she gotten her revenge, but she had also restored order. The era of the water pistol was officially over. This story, whether it's true or just a brilliant piece of folklore, lasts because it taps into a universal desire for justice. It is not about being mean. It is about restoring balance. It is a reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't a loud confrontation, but a quiet, intelligent plan that lets people Essie's own worst habits become their downfall. The story of the water-filled chair is a time capsule from an era when a school prank was a local event with temporary consequences. But the world of pranks has changed dramatically. What once might have been harmless fun can now have life-altering consequences. A popular tradition for graduating students today is a game called Senior Assassin. It is a huge elimination-style tournament where students are assigned targets. They have to assassinate with water guns, often for a cash prize. Sounds fun, right? But police departments across the country have issued stark warnings about how dangerous it can be. The problem is, to an outsider, the game can look terrifyingly real. In Illinois, police responded to a 911 call after students in ski masks entered a restaurant with realistic-looking water guns. An adult with a concealed carry license was there and mistook the prank for a real armed robbery. Police warned that the situation was seconds away from turning deadly. In Florida, an off-duty law enforcement officer shot and wounded an 18-year-old student who was playing the game outside his home late at night, mistaking the teen's water gun for a real weapon in the dark. The risks aren't just about mistaken identity either. The competitive nature of the game encourages reckless behavior. In Texas, a 17-year-old student was critically injured after falling from a moving Jeep while trying to assassinate a target. He tragically died from his injuries over a month later. Students have been reported for trespassing, reckless driving, and causing car crashes, all in the name of the game. Legally, the consequences can be just as severe. What a student sees as a prank can easily become criminal trespassing, disorderly conduct, or even assault. If a prank causes injury or property damage, students can face adult charges. One California police department, after arresting teens for a viral door kick challenge, put it perfectly. TikTok clout fades, but criminal records stick around. Even a fake threat called in as a joke can lead to charges of making terroristic threats, as was the case for two individuals in West Virginia. It's a huge contrast to the simple, self contained revenge of our story. The lesson from the water filled chair was about cleverness and poetic justice. The lesson from Senior Assassin is that today, the line between a prank and a tragedy is dangerously thin. The story of the chair soaking is a perfect example of petty revenge. It was clever, harmless, and perfectly targeted. The bullies were punished, the indifferent teacher was shocked into action, and our hero got her justice without anyone ever knowing. It is the kind of story that makes you smile, a small victory for the quiet and clever people out there. But it is also a relic of a simpler time. As we've seen, the stakes for pranks have gotten so much higher. So what do you think? Is this the most perfect act of petty revenge you've ever heard? And where do you draw the line between a harmless prank and a dangerous mistake? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more tales of sweet, sweet revenge. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.